My husband and I were together for 7 years before we got married. 3 years into our marriage he cheated on me. He installed cameras in our bedroom just to prove to that woman that he never touched me. As I scrolled through social media, a flashy post caught my eye. A blogger named Sophia Richard had just posted a picture of an Hermes Birkin bag with the caption, "Thank you, my love." A little gift from his business trip to France for this soon-to be mom. The location tag. The most exclusive neighborhood in San Francisco. The comments were flooded with admiration. Everyone envied Mrs. Richard, her wealth, her romance, her perfect life. And it would have been enviable indeed, if the dear husband she was talking about wasn't mine. My fingers hovered over the keyboard before I typed a single line beneath her post. "You should be more discreet." A second later, Sophia Richard fired back. "You're just jealous." I stared at her reply, chuckled, and leaned back in my chair. A plan was already forming in my mind. I turned my gaze to the Birkin sitting beside me, the one Vincent had brought back from France. A high-quality counterfeit. Switching from my dummy account to my personal profile, I snapped a few close-ups of the bag and its receipt. Then, with a casual flick of my fingers, I crafted a new post. "Sis, my husband got me this on his trip to France, but something feels off. Can anyone help me verify if it's real?" Satisfied, I logged out and went back to my tasks, patiently waiting for the next move. Vincent and I had been together for 10 years. I thought we had a solid marriage until I found out he was secretly supporting a mistress. A college student, no less. It all started 6 months ago at my alma mater's centennial celebration. Vincent and I, both honored as distinguished alumni, had been invited to give speeches. That was when she latched onto him. Sophia, a young university student, bright-eyed and full of youthful charm. She had looked up at Vincent with shy admiration, her voice sweet and hesitant. "Mr. Richard, I'm sorry to bother you, but I didn't quite understand parts of your speech. Would it be okay if I added you on social media? Maybe you could help me if I have questions." Back then I still saw Vincent as a principled man, someone who knew his boundaries. He had glanced at me for approval and I, trusting, had smiled and nodded. Little did I know, that moment was the beginning of the end for the marriage I had cherished so dearly. Vincent had never been good at lying. Perhaps it was because he had been faithful for so long that deception didn't come naturally to him. Every little change in his behavior stood out like a glaring red flag. At first it was the way he smiled at his phone, secretively like a love-struck teenager. But the second I came near, he would hastily lock the screen, his body stiff with guilt. Then, the messages he used to send me during his work breaks became less frequent. Our conversations became less and less. Next came the sudden surge in business trips, the dwindling intimacy, and then one day he installed security cameras in our bedroom. I had frowned, confused. "Why?" Vincent had gently stroked my hair and smiled. "There have been a lot of break-ins in our neighborhood. Mrs. Nancy next door just had her necklace stolen. I'm away so often and I worry about your safety. This way I can check in on you while I'm traveling. It helps me feel at ease." That night, as I stepped out of the shower, I noticed his phone lying on the counter. Its screen lit up with a notification. I had never been the kind of wife who snooped through her husband's phone. But Vincent's recent behavior had left me with no choice. I hesitated for only a moment, then reached for it. His phone password was still my birthday. The moment I unlocked it, my eyes widened. "Is the camera installed?" That single jarring message sat in the chat window, quickly followed by another. "Vincent, you promised me you're not allowed to touch her." The sender? Sophia. I scrolled up. But their previous messages had been wiped clean. Not a trace left. And just like that, everything clicked. Vincent had betrayed our decade-long relationship for Sophia. Had even installed surveillance cameras in our bedroom to prove to her that he wasn't touching me. I put back the phone back to the original place, pretending I'd seen nothing. Thankfully, the cameras hadn't been activated yet, which meant Vincent had no idea I'd snooped through his phone. I took a deep breath, smoothed out my emotions, and when Vincent stepped out of the shower, I greeted him with a sweet, affectionate kiss. He subtly turned his head, avoiding my lips with a polite smile. "Don't be like that. I'm exhausted." Ah, the devoted husband, preserving his loyalty for his mistress. After discovering Vincent's affair with Sophia, I decided it was time to return to the company. When he saw me walk into the office, the shock on his face was priceless. I leisurely observed the storm of emotions flickering across his features. It took him a moment to regain composure before he finally asked, Elena, what are you doing here? I stepped closer, my tone light and playful. Well, you're always so busy with work and I barely get to see you. It gets lonely at home, you know? So I asked my dad to reinstate my position at the company. This way we can be together every day. After graduation, Vincent and I had both joined my family's business. My father wanted to groom me for future leadership, preparing me to take over the company someday. But Vincent had played the doting husband, claiming he hated to see me overwhelmed with work. Let me handle it all, Head said. You deserve to relax. Blinded by love, I had been foolish enough to believe him, never realizing his true intentions. Over the years, Head quietly built his influence within the company, securing a significant amount of power. Honey, I added with a pout, you're working too hard. It's not good for your health. So, I talked to Dad and he's approved a 2-week vacation for you. You need to rest. ID already made the arrangements without asking for Vincent's opinion. The moment the words left my lips, his face darkened. That's not necessary, he said quickly, his jaw tightening. I don't need a break. There are important deals I need to handle. After a brief pause, he forced a calm tone. Elena, you're being impulsive. What if this delays critical contracts? That could seriously. I pressed a finger gently against his lips, cutting him off with a playful smile. Relax, Vincent. I'm sure my dad can handle things just fine. Then, feigning a little frustration, I added, I only did this because I'm worried about you. I just want you to rest. His expression softened slightly, though the tension lingered beneath the surface. He pulled me into a stiff embrace. Thank you, Elena. I wrapped my arms around his neck, my voice dropping to a soft whisper. The weather's perfect this time of year in San Francisco. The beach house is sitting empty. Why don't you spend some time there? Watch the ocean. Clear your mind. I watched as his resistance melted away. His eyes lit up and he squeezed my hand gently. Elena, you're amazing. I couldn't help but smile. I knew he meant it. He truly believed I was the perfect, considerate wife, generous enough to give him and Sophia their little vacation in peace. But while Vincent was away, I'd be right here, reclaiming every ounce of power Head stolen from me at the company. As expected, Vincent took Sophia to the beach house for his little vacation. He even forgot my birthday was coming up. That morning, instead of waking up to a text or call from my loving husband, my phone lit up with something even more surprising, a call from my father. Elena, since Vincent isn't home, why don't you come over? It's your birthday. I got you a big cake. I knew he was trying to win me over. Despite the generous allowance Head sent me every month since college, we'd never really been close. We coexisted in silence, our conversations limited to polite exchanges during family gatherings, until recently when I reached out to him asking to return to the company. Of course, Head been thrilled. I might have been blind to Vincent's ambitions, but my father, an old shark in the business world, had seen right through him. I was his only child. If I didn't take over the company, it would inevitably fall into Vincent's hands. And my father wasn't about to hand over his life's work to an outsider. When I arrived, he was already waiting in the dining room, sitting stiffly at the head of the table. On the serving cart beside him stood an enormous birthday cake, 27 layers tall. Right. I was 27 today. I took a seat across from him. My father's eyes grew misty, his hands trembling slightly as he stood to cut the cake. You used to love birthdays when you were little, he murmured, voice gruff with emotion. Back then. Your smile lit up the whole room. I cut him off, my tone light but edged with steel. Dad, do you know why Vincent isn't home for his vacation? He froze mid-slice. I smiled. Because right now he's with another woman. Tell me, do you think he even remembers it's my birthday? When I was a kid, we didn't have much. My father's business ventures had failed more times than I could count, but my parents never let me feel the weight of it. On my birthdays, they'd scrape together enough to buy the prettiest cake they could find. We'd sit together, just the three of us. I'd blow out the candles and make the same wish every year. I want to be happy with mommy and daddy forever. Eventually, my father hit it big. Caught the right wave at the right time, and suddenly money was no object. But happiness, that was another story. Soon there were always different women by his side. New faces, new smiles. None of them my mother's. One birthday I finally asked, why isn't daddy coming home? Did he forget it's my birthday? My mother had smiled, fed me a bite of cake, tucked me into bed, and then locked herself in the bathroom and ended her life. Since then, my birthday had been more than just a date on the calendar. It was the anniversary of the day my mother gave up. After that, I moved in with my aunt. I wanted nothing to do with my father. Not a call. Not a visit. Not a word. Not until I graduated from college. The memory snapped like a brittle thread, pulling me back to the present. I stood, walked over to the towering cake and looked at my father, the man who was older now, softer around the edges, but still carrying the weight of every choice he'd ever made. My voice was calm, measured. "I'll handle Vincent. I just need you to back me up." I dipped my finger into the frosting, tasted it and smiled faintly. "Doesn't taste the same anymore." Of course it didn't. I wasn't that little girl anymore, the one who believed birthdays were about family, cake, and wishes that actually came true. The day was getting late. When Vincent called, I was at the cemetery, visiting my mother's grave. I ignored the first call, then the second, and the third. Finally, I picked up. For a moment, there was only silence on the other end, then his voice, soft, filled with guilt. "I'm sorry, Elena. I can't believe I forgot such an important day." Back in college, not long after we'd started dating, Vincent found out my birthday was also the anniversary of my mother's death. His eyes had welled with tears the moment I told him. His face etched with raw sympathy. My dad had someone else. My mom couldn't take it. That was all ID said. Simple sentence. But Vincent had pulled me into his arms, holding me like he could shield me from the past. We'd cursed the world together that night, raged against cheaters and liars, swearing we'd never betray each other. Never. After that, had insisted on visiting my mother's grave with me every year. He said it wasn't just for me, it was for her. "Your mom needs to see that you're happy, Elena. That you're loved." And for 10 years, had kept that promise. Till now. This was the first time I stood here alone. I guess he just forgot. Or maybe he was too busy. Funny how promises only seem to matter in the moment they're made. My voice was soft, carried by the evening breeze. "Vincent, how do you plan to make it up to me?" He whispered my name, full of remorse. "Elena." I let out a light laugh, sharp as glass hidden under velvet. "Fight. My dad said you'll be heading to France for a business trip after your vacation. Why don't you bring me back a bag? You know what I like. Surprise me." "Of course," he replied quickly, eager to redeem himself. "We'll catch the next flight home to be with you." "No need," I said sweetly. "Enjoy your vacation." There was a pause,